Then let's continue with the next speaker. We now go again to the application, and we have with us Purnendu K Chaubey. He's a vice president of ReNew from India. The talk is about hybrid power plants, the future new normal question mark. As you might know, India has been really pioneering that sort of application. They call it also RTC, round the clock power. If several technologies are combined, and we will see that obviously also more and more in other countries, simply because that's the way to go to efficiently use grids and also serve the energy systems. So I'm very much looking forward to your presentation, Purnendu. The floor is yours.
So I'm not able to share my video.
You're not. Why not?
You have
we saw it just recently. Can somebody help? If Udaya, can you help? Otherwise,
it's writing you can't start your video because the host had stopped it.
Oh, can you give him access?
Yeah.
You know.
Okay. So good afternoon. Thanks, Michael. Let me share my screen. So
how it works.
So from the world of EPC to modules, we talked a lot about the modules. So now I'll talk about the development part of the projects, right? So I'll get into the hybrid power plants. So it's kind of very common or very a lot of deployment is happening in that space in India. So what I will do, as we know that India is already on a very aggressive path for clean energy deployment, decarbonization or energy transition journey. So we have very aggressive plans. We wanted to be net zero by 2070. We wanted to add around 500 gigawatts of RE by 2030. We wanted to reduce our emission intensity of GDP to around 45% from the level of 2005. So with these kind of aggressive targets, there are a lot of permutation combination in terms of RE deployment, which is being planned or which is being thought of in the country. So in my presentation, I will just cover 5 aspects. One is like a broad level of India RE overview, India renewable energy overview. Then I'll talk about the kind of bidding which is happening in India. Then I'll get to the original topic of mainly the hybrid power plants. So there are various nomenclatures which have been given to more or less these kind of plants. We call it RTC, we call it peak power, we call it firm and dispatchable RE. So I'll talk about the hybrid when we started the journey. Then we had certain RTC and peak power projects that I'll talk about. And then very recently, we have a load following tenders, what we call firm and dispatchable RE, where the buyer, they give their load profile and the seller or the generator has to match or has to supply power as per the load profile given by the buyer. So these 5 topics that I will discuss. And just India means if you look at India, we have around 416 gigawatts of installed capacity right now by March 23, and out of which around 172 gigawatt was renewable energy, and that included that did not include the large hydro plants. So we have around 66.8 gigawatts of solar, around 43 gigawatts of wind, and 10.8 gigawatts of a small hydro, and 4.9 gigawatts of that biopower. So when you sum the capacity on the right-hand side, it will be close to around 125 gigawatt. And we have around 47, 48 odd gigawatts of large hydro. So overall, if you look at the RE capacity of India right now, that is close to 172 gigawatts. So if you look at the kind of growth that has taken place in India in last 9-10 years, that is phenomenal. So if we include large hydro, so we had around 2 times, we doubled the capacity in last 8-9 years in RE. And if you exclude large hydro, we kind of tripled our capacity in last 9-10 years. The growth is phenomenal in terms of solar installation. So 2014, we were hardly close to around 3 gigawatts in solar, which we are reaching around 70 gigawatts now. So there's a kind of 25x growth in solar installation in India. And wind, we just means in 2014, we were around 21 gigawatts, and now we are reaching around 42 gigawatts. So this is the kind of capacity addition that has already taken place, and we are aiming around 500 gigawatts of this RE capacity by 2030, and to make this happen, so we have this MNRE, what we call Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. It's a Government of India entity. They had come out with RE trajectory of 50 gigawatts of bidding every year. So a month by month, they have the plans, how much capacity will be coming out every year. And out of that 50 gigawatts, 10 gigawatts will be wind, and rest 40 gigawatts will be solar, hybrid, and RTC kind of tenders. And again, that FDRE, that firm and dispatchable RE that I just mentioned. So this is the kind of tendering which will happen in India. And just to ensure that there are enough buyers, so we are likely to come out with very strict RPO, renewable purchase obligation by the buying entities. Then even the industries in India, they are likely to get mandates to buy a certain percentage of their requirement from RE sources. So these kind of mandates, and even with the kind of product like FDRE, firm and dispatchable RE, where you already have identified your buyer and you are trying to customize your product to the requirement of the buyer, there is no challenge of buyer as such. So this is the kind of plan that we have. So I'll start with the core topic now, the hybrid. So we started that this journey of RE will not be enough with plain vanilla solar or hybrid tenders. And even the transmission network, which was being created for solar or wind, that was not being optimally utilized, because solar is there during the daytime and wind is there in the evening hours or late evening hours. So when you have this hybrid tenders, that will at least result in optimal utilization of the network which will be created, right? And also this will kind of try to reduce the demand supply mismatch. So there is one nodal agency, what we call Solar Energy Corporation of India. They started this hybrid journey. They came out with a tender of 1200 megawatts, where what they did is like they fixed the tariff for the off-peak hours, and they asked the developers to bid for tariff during the peak hours. And you have to supply during the peak hours 6 hours daily. That is a mandatory supply that you need to meet. And for that, there was a requirement to come out with a storage minimal storage addition also. So that was the largest renewable cum storage tender, and that was won by 2 companies, Greenco and ReNew, and the tariff discovered was close to 6.12 and 6.85. So of course, Greenco was planning this with pump storage, and ReNew, we came out with a solutioning with battery storage. And so ReNew is deploying 150 megawatt hours of battery for this project. So when you look at this kind of tenders, then there was another product which was experimented, that was 400 megawatt of RTC tender, where they gave a very high CUF, capacity utilization factor, to be met by the developers. And to meet that higher CUF, you need to add much larger capacity than the PPA capacity at the back end. Also, there was an experimentation which was done with mixing the RE and thermal. So there were two tenders and auctions conducted for RE plus thermal, what we call RTC2. But somehow that was not that successful. There was some price discovery also, but somehow it could not take off. So now the goal is to come for pure RE RTC, pure RE where there will not be any kind of thermal deployment. It has to be pure RE RTC tender, which will be taking up in the future. Just skip it, because just to give you a glimpse of, in RTC1, we had that annual CUF, which is 80%, and monthly CUF, which was 70%, not less than 70%, which was allowed. And tariff was to be escalated 3% every year. 24 months was the scheduled commissioning time. And this tender was kind of technology agnostic. You can go for any mix of solar and wind, and even this was not mandatory to go for single location. You can have your solar at one location, you can have your wind at different location, and then what you are supposed to meet is just CUF requirement of the tender. And there was some penalty if you are not meeting the energy supply. RTC2 was like which was to be deployed with thermal, but somehow it didn't. So I'll not touch upon it, because we could not find a suitable buyer for it. So the construct that was kind of experimented was, so RTC1 RE plus energy storage system, RTC2 was 80% RE and 20% other technologies, or 51% RE and 49% thermal. So as I told you earlier, RTC2 was not that successful. RTC1 took off, and so in RTC1 there was a minimum proportion of solar and wind which was to be maintained, 30% solar and 70% wind, and that best component was mandatorily to be around 100 megawatt hours. So there were some guidelines which were framed just to ensure that these projects were a reality, and these guidelines were prepared with the consultation of the developers which were to be deploying these projects. So when you look at this tariff design comparison of these kind of projects, so in tariff design, that RTC 1, 2, and assured peak power. So in assured peak power, tariff design was fixed. In RTC 1, there was escalation which was to the extent of 3%, which was allowed. And in RTC 2, the tariff was partly fixed and partly variable, primarily because there was a thermal component to it. In peak power, it was mandated to have all the solar, wind, and storage at the same location. But in RTC 1 and RTC 2, there was no constraint like it. And then there was this different capacity utilization factor. So the message that I'm trying to give is, like, there were various combinations which had been experimented over here in India in terms of RTC, and gradually RTC is gaining a lot of importance. So even in Q1 to 2023, all the plans that we have for tenders, RTC is that hybrid, or RTC is getting is having 18% tenders which have been issued. And even in recent tenders in states also, quantities as well as the tariff that has also been rationalized for the hybrid tenders. So if you look at Gujarat, 300 megawatt wind or solar and then hybrid. So even hybrid is getting, the tariff is getting rationalized into course of time. So again, even with here also the decarbonization journey that India is foreseeing, the goals that we have, there is a lot of impetus which is being given to the hybrid projects. So there is already battery storage capacity which is being planned, a lot of transmission capacity addition to the tune of around 25,000 circuit kilometers of AC or 15,000 circuit kilometers of 400 kV lines which have been planned. There are some offshore wind which is also being envisaged over here. So very soon we are going to have a tender of 1 gigawatt of offshore tender in Gujarat and Tamil Nadu. So 500 megawatt in Gujarat and 500 megawatt in Tamil Nadu. So more or less the message is like the days of plain vanilla solar and wind that are going to be kind of a lesson, and more of hybrid or RTC or FDRE kind of tenders are going to come in the market. Again, this is like the various procurement guidelines and policies which have been framed by the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. And the basic idea is like you have to meet 90% availability annually, 90% availability monthly, and even 90% availability during the peak hours. And that peak hours will be identified by the load dispatch centers, and the minimum 51% energy must be offered annually from the RE sources. And so various permutation combinations around these projects have been planned and experimented by the ministry. We came out with our solar and wind hybrid policy in 2018 also around it. And there was some alignment of the transmission planning around it also. So the project that we have with respect to peak power, so that's a hybrid project with energy storage system. We are getting an off-peak tariff of 2.88 and a peak hour tariff of 6.85. And here 300 megawatt has to be scheduled to Solar Energy Corporation. And the peak hour, 6 hours, we have to give a total of 6 hours, we have to supply power. And here the annual CUF is around 35%. So basically focus here is on to meet the requirement of power during the peak hours, and excess generation, whatever will be coming out of this project, we can sell to the grid at the peak tariff, off-peak tariff. And there are various penalty clauses if we are not able to meet the requirement of during the peak hours, etc. So the way we have configured is we have planned a solar, wind, and battery energy storage system at the same location, and we are kind of evacuating this to 400 kV substation, which is operated by Indian Power Grid of India. So we are deploying 322 megawatt of wind, 81 megawatt of solar, and 75 megawatt or 150 for 2 hours. So around 150 megawatt hour of battery energy storage system in this project. There is another project that we are having that is what we call round-the-clock power. So here the requirement is minimum 70% of monthly CUF and 80% of annual CUF, and we are getting a tariff of 2.9 rupees per unit with an escalation of 3%, and excess power more than 400 megawatt that we can sell in the Indian power market, and there is a penalty if any shortfall in the power requirement is over there. So again, here we have so this project RTC is not co-located. So we planned 3 wind projects at different locations. So one is in two wind projects are in Karnataka state, and 1 wind project is in Maharashtra state, and then solar and storage we are planning in Rajasthan. So that's the beauty of this configuration, where we are meeting a single tender requirement by deploying projects at 4 different locations in the country, and they are very far off. And in fact, that involves 3 regional load dispatch centers in India also. So that's the way new deployment are evolving in India. So as I said in my introduction, that we are coming out with this load following tenders. So here what is happening, that distribution utilities of India, they are giving their load profile, and basis that load profile, there are tenders being issued where you need to ensure that you meet the requirement of that distribution or that buyer during the various time blocks, and rest of the power that will be whatever surplus that you'll be having, you can sell in the market. So here there's no transmission charges basically. So in India for RE, there is a transmission waiver till 2025. So that is available for this load following tenders also. A generation profile is formed around the clock and load following, and there is RPO benefit available. And if there is non-availability of the grid, etc., then there is some compensation which will be given. And this scheduling has to be firm schedule before the ITM gate closure. It's before that. We have this in India. You can reschedule your power before the 6 time blocks of the actual supply. So it has to be formed through RE, which is a big task, and there are various flexibilities which have been deployed over here, and there is a nil fuel cost escalation risk over here. So I've just presented a kind of comparison with the coal-based long-term power purchase agreements versus plain vanilla RE tenders like solar, wind, and hybrid. So this load following is a new product which is there in the Indian market, and a lot of tenders have been issued around it. So this is again this load following are hybrid projects with energy storage system with multiple points of grid connection. They are firm, and their availability against hourly demand profile is specified in the RFP. And these projects will be, if it is less than 1,000 megawatt, the scheduled time of commissioning will be given is 24 months, and if it's more than 1,000 megawatt, that is 30 months. And ESS capacity, that is storage capacity, is to be decided by the developer, but there is a requirement to go for storage that is mandatory. Means you have to schedule your product, your portfolio in such a manner that there is some quantum of storage in this in the whole portfolio. Then there are various criteria for generation shortfall, reduced offtake, etc. So the various incentives for early commissioning, then excess generation. So basically, just to ensure that developers are able to meet their economic goals, because this is going to be a bit costly. So any surplus power which will be produced out of this, they are allowed to sell in the market. So India having one very mature power market, and here that developers are likely to get a lot of incentive by selling excess power into this market. So various tenders have been issued recently in India by Solar Energy Corporation, then Satluj Jal Vidyut Nigam Limited, and even NTPC also. So all these tenders, the procurer is already identified, like Punjab, MP, Haryana, and these tenders are customized as per the requirement of different states. So I think I'm on time. That's all from my side. See if anyone is having any question. I think I overshot my time.
Yeah, maybe just one brief question, and we still have the panel later on. So from your perspective, are you are you satisfied with the policy developments regarding hybrid solar in India? And if you look in other markets, actually, this, at least if I look at that, it's nowhere as much advanced as is this in India. So what are you seeing there?
No, so in fact, there have been a lot of policy enablement in the country. In fact, when you design your hybrid project in the country, and suppose like a 300 megawatt of RTC that we are doing, so at the back end, we are deploying 1300 megawatt of capacity. So 1300 means like 900 wind, 400 solar. So from the government, we are getting connectivity for complete 1300 megawatt, and that too at different locations. So just on the basis of one PPA of 300 megawatt, we are getting connectivity or long open access to the grid for the complete 1300 megawatt. And that's the decision that the government has taken, that any capacity that you deploy just to for your hybrid projects or RTC projects, the grid will be available for you. So that's the biggest enablement that the government has done for these kind of projects. And I think from government side, we are getting a lot of support in terms of, in terms of not only the grid, but even a lot of execution challenges that developers are facing in over here. So a lot of activism we are finding from the government in sorting out the issues.
Okay, super. Okay, then let's discuss the other things later on the panel, and we continue. Okay, thanks a lot, Purnendu, and then
thank you. Thank you very much.